Night Hawk, the sole surviving stealth reconnaissance vessel from a fateful mission, hurtled through the infinite void. Light from distant stars couldn't dispel the heavy darkness that enveloped the cockpit, where only the soft whirring of the engine and Lyra's monotonous, almost soulless data updates broke the silence. Kalen 7 was gone, his sacrifice at the first Shadow Spire, a desperate act to buy time for the rest, had left a deep scar on the soul of every team member. This wound couldn't be healed by time, and whenever night fell across the galaxy, the image of Kalen facing death alone reappeared, haunting the survivors. Dr. Aris Thorne, a gaunt man with glasses perched low on his nose, had chosen to stay behind to protect the data device containing precious fragments of Precursor civilization. His death, a tragic yet meaningful one, became a symbol of sorrow no less significant than Kalen's sacrifice. Although Aris was no longer there, his presence permeated every line of code Lyra deciphered, every Precursor symbol he yearned to unravel, and the weight of the secrets he had entrusted. That burden now rested heavily on Raya and Jax, the only remaining members of the original team. Lyra, once an emotionless AI entity, now carried a deep, empty tone in her voice. She had lost her closest friend, her companion in every battle. Her voice of light had lost its main inspiration. Lyra, now transferred to the Night Hawk's main system, struggled with new emotions she had never been programmed to understand: pain, loss, and immense responsibility. She had to lead weaker, yet remarkably resilient humans who were clinging to fragile hope. Guardian Raya, who had once appeared cold and stoic on the battlefield, now wore a contemplative expression, mixed with fatigue and an unyielding iron will. She was a warrior, she understood sacrifice. She had witnessed countless deaths, but the deaths of Kalen, and especially Aris, a man who was not a warrior, haunted her like a recurring nightmare. She felt a heavy responsibility on her shoulders, the responsibility to protect the remaining members and complete the mission for which Kalen and Aris had traded their lives. She was the most realistic in the group, capable of making the toughest decisions without hesitation. Her steel will was the driving force that kept the team moving forward. Even as their legs grew tired and their minds exhausted, she knew that if they faltered, if they gave up, all sacrifices would be meaningless, and humanity would have no further chance. Engineer Jax sat in a corner of the ship's cabin, his hands still fumbling with damaged cables and microcircuits from their escape. He didn't speak much, but his silence was more terrifying than any lament. His face was haggard, his eyes staring blankly into nothingness, trying to forget Aris's last image. Kalen was the one who saved his life on Xylos, and Aris was the one who saved his life at the first Shadow Spire. Anger and sorrow mingled within him, forming a steely resolve. Now, he would use all his skills, all the crazy creativity of a genius engineer, to ensure that sacrifice was not in vain. He would transform the Night Hawk into a fearsome war machine, a flying fortress in the darkness, a living monument to the fallen, a symbol of humanity's resilience. During the weeks-long journey back to the last Bastion space station, one of humanity's largest remaining defensive strongholds, Lyra tirelessly delved deeper into the data from the first Shadow Spire. She accessed the deepest layers of encryption, deciphering complex algorithms that even humanity's most advanced artificial intelligences struggled to comprehend. She discovered many astonishing things, truths buried for millions of years within the Precursor's intricate code. There wasn't just one, but hundreds, even thousands of Shadow Spires scattered across the galaxy, forming a colossal network, a complex interconnected system that humanity was only just beginning to understand. These structures were not merely repositories of forgotten knowledge or ancient fortresses. They were also part of a massive defensive system, or a potential doomsday machine, depending on how they were activated. More importantly, Lyra found clearer clues about the central point of this network, a place where all Precursor secrets and the deep origin of the corrosive entity could be found. This place was called the Eternal Core, a name that evoked eternity and mystery. According to the data, the Eternal Core was located in an extremely dangerous region of space, near the boundary of a supermassive black hole known as the Blind Horizon. It was a suicidal journey, an almost impossible mission, a one-way path few dared to embark on. But it was humanity's only glimmer of hope. A final door to survival. When the Night Hawk finally pierced the dense defenses and docked at the last Bastion space station, Kalen's team, now just Jax and Lyra, were welcomed as heroes from the abyss. But the eyes of the federal officers held not only respect but also horror as they heard their report. The Federal Command, led by General Valerius, immediately convened an emergency meeting. The atmosphere in the meeting room was heavy with anxiety and suspicion. Their report on the corrosive entity caused a wave of panic within the Federal Command, who were already exhausted from the protracted war with the Shadow Empire. Many high-ranking officers didn't believe the words of the two surviving soldiers and an AI. They thought it was war-induced hallucination, psychological sequelae after brutal confrontations, or even a new and sophisticated biological weapon of the Shadow Empire they had never known. Others, more ambitious, suggested it was merely a conspiracy by Valerius to seize power or push for an expensive military program to consolidate his position amidst the chaos. However, General Valerius, a stern man with eyes full of worry and vast battlefield experience, believed them. He had lost too many friends and comrades in this war. He had witnessed the most irrational aspects of war. And he knew that the fear in Lyra's voice couldn't be fake. Kalen's lifeless gaze before his sacrifice spoke volumes. And Aris's disappearance was undeniable proof. In the meeting, under the dim lights of the strategic command room, Lyra presented a detailed account of the confrontation in the Shadow Spire. The brutality of the Abyssal Legion, and the utter horror of the corrosive entity. Her voice, though tired, was clear and decisive, unwavering. Jax supported with technical analyses of the Shadow Spire's materials and structures, showing that Precursor technology far surpassed all human understanding. He also presented data on the corrosive entity's spread and assimilation capabilities, with terrifying graphic simulations of its outbreak that made many in the room turn away in disgust. Lyra, with flickering holographic images, recreated the corrosive entity's devastation of Precursor civilization in a map of the Shadow Spire network, fragile bright dots on a vast galactic map. Each dot a curse waiting to be unleashed. "We are not just facing the Shadow Empire," Lyra said, her voice echoing clearly in the meeting room, though still carrying a hint of her inherent coolness. "We are also facing an entity capable of devouring all life. The corrosive entity doesn't care about politics or territory, doesn't care about religion or philosophy. It only wants to assimilate. And it's awakening. If we don't act now, if we continue to doubt and argue, the entire galaxy, every civilization, will be transformed into an inert mass of flesh, subservient to its collective consciousness." General Valerius finally made a bold decision, one that could change the fate of humanity and all life in the galaxy. "We cannot sit here and die. If these Shadow Spires hold the key to combating the corrosive entity, and even the Shadow Empire, we must find them. We must learn how to stop this threat, no matter the cost. Kalen and Aris have given us this chance, and we will not waste it." The team's new mission, now under Raya's leadership, was to seek out and infiltrate other Shadow Spires. The primary objective was to find the Eternal Core, the place containing the Precursor's ultimate solution to the corrosive entity and the key to controlling it. The Federation, despite lingering doubts and facing internal uprisings caused by the information about the corrosive entity, had no choice but to provide them with a smaller, less experienced scientific and military team, but one composed of the only ones willing to risk everything. The Night Hawk would continue to be their primary vessel, but upgraded with deeper scanning systems, advanced defensive systems, and more powerful weapons, perfected day and night by Jax and other engineers, transforming it into a ship ready for any battle. The journey to the second Shadow Spire, located by Lyra in a distant spiral nebula called the Labyrinth of Curses, was a far greater challenge than their first trip. This nebula was not just a massive cloud of gas and dust, it was renowned for its anomalous electromagnetic fields, deadly space storms, and unpredictable spatial anomalies, where the laws of physics seemed strangely bent. Fiery plasma streams tore through space, sudden gravitational fields could rip the ship apart, and atomic particle storms howled like cursed souls. Space travel became more stressful than ever, as the Night Hawk had to constantly dodge massive cosmic gas explosions, deadly plasma currents, and unexpected gravitational fields that could tear the ship to pieces. Jax continuously adjusted the engines and shields, sweat beading on his forehead, his eyes glued to the console. He had almost become one with the ship. Every movement he made was precise and decisive. Fatigue was etched on his face. But he had no time to rest. He knew that even the slightest mistake could lead to disaster. Raya's team, though they had lost Kalen and Aris, two crucial pillars, still operated with astonishing efficiency. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit, Raya displayed innate leadership, making quick and decisive tactical decisions under immense pressure. She was not only a skilled sharpshooter but also a born commander, knowing how to maximize each member's abilities, instilling fire and faith in them. Lyra, now the main brain and voice of the operation, tirelessly collected and deciphered new fragments of Precursor language she received from distant signals. Each fragment was a small beam of light illuminating their path, helping Lyra guide the Night Hawk through the most dangerous routes, areas no other ship dared to venture. Jax continuously improved the Night Hawk's defensive systems and technology. He had transformed the ship into a true mobile fortress, a sturdy home amidst the chaotic sea of stars. He even fabricated several new, more compact yet effective weapons from materials salvaged from the previous Shadow Spire, turning them into powerful survival tools. During their transit through the labyrinth of curses, they continually encountered Shadow Empire patrol ships. Space skirmishes became more frequent and dangerous. Not just fleeting encounters but prolonged battles, demanding persistence and cunning tactics. The Abyssal Legion also seemed to be frantically searching for the Shadow Spires, indicating they too understood the importance of these structures and might be undertaking their own projects. Projects that could be even more terrifying than galactic domination. Raya displayed excellent command talent, employing daring offensive and defensive tactics, exploiting every minor environmental advantage to win. Even when outnumbered, she knew that every small victory was a step closer to their ultimate goal. A fragile chance to maintain hope. Enemy at 3 o'clock, 3 light cruisers, Lyra reported, her voice calm and professional again, but still carrying a hint of her inherent coolness. Like a reminder of the brutality of the war. They're trying to isolate us. Cut off our retreat. Jax, maximum impulse shields. Raya, lock onto their engines. Concentrate fire on one to take it down quickest. Create an escape route. Their new commander was no longer Kalen, but Lyra's voice still rang out with determination, guiding them every step, every move. They continued deeper into the nebula, fighting inch by inch. Small battles occurred constantly, draining both the team's resources and spirits. However, each successful escape reinforced their faith in each other and in Lyra's abilities. A faith built from the ashes of loss. Finally, after weeks of tension, after overcoming countless spatial traps and enemy ambushes, they found the second Shadow Spire. It was smaller than the first one they had explored but was located deep within the center of a massive asteroid cluster, protected by an almost impenetrable invisible energy field. This structure was not a war fortress but a colossal mausoleum, carved with symbols and images depicting the tragic historical events of the Precursors. Stories of creation, prosperity, and ultimately, annihilation. Upon infiltrating the second Shadow Spire, Lyra quickly identified it as a colossal Precursor eternal library. This structure was designed to preserve the knowledge, history, and deepest secrets of that great civilization. Rather than being a war machine or laboratory, vast corridors filled with massive data storage crystals and holographic projections flickering from millions of years ago revealed lost civilizations, ended wars, and forgotten secrets of a golden age. The blue flickering light from the crystals reflected off the walls, creating an ethereal and haunting space. Amazing! This is a treasure trove of Precursor knowledge, Jax exclaimed, forgetting the surrounding danger, his eyes shining with the excitement of an engineer finding an unseen circuit board. A technology beyond all human dreams. Lyra, can you access everything? Can you find a way to reverse the assimilation process? Lyra, with her superior abilities, quickly connected to the library's data network. She began deciphering more detailed information about the Precursors, their complex history, their incredibly advanced technology, and especially their tragic and unwinnable war against the corrosive entity. Holographic images appeared, showing great cities falling, mighty fleets shattering, and billions of sentient beings transforming into hideous monsters. They fought for thousands of years, Lyra said, her voice filled with reverence and a touch of sorrow, as images of fallen Precursor warriors appeared as a reminder of fate's brutality. They tried to seal it, destroy it, even tried to negotiate with it, but it was too intelligent, too adaptable, too brutal. It was like an unstoppable flood, sweeping away everything in its path. They discovered that the corrosive entity was not just a mindless parasite or a mere plague as they had once thought. It was a colossal, sentient, and learning collective consciousness. It didn't merely consume living organisms, it learned from infected hosts, adapted to environments, and could even transmute organic matter, creating new creatures from infected hosts. Terrifying and disgusting bio-machines. And the most terrifying thing, it had learned to use Precursor technology after assimilating the first architects, who had built the Shadow Spires. That meant the corrosive entity was not just a biological threat but also a technological one, capable of controlling the most advanced machines and weapons. It's not just a disease, Raya whispered, clutching her gun. She felt a chilling fear. It's an intelligent enemy, a supreme intellect. It devoured the very civilization that created these structures. We're facing a threat beyond all human comprehension, something that could even defeat the Shadow Empire. However, this Shadow Spire was not entirely safe. Even if it wasn't a combat fortress, traces of the corrosive entity had appeared. They began encountering creatures modified by the corrosive entity, not just simple fleshy blobs like in the previous spire, but creatures with clearer structures. Once Shadow Empire soldiers left behind or even indigenous nebula creatures, now completely controlled by the corrosive entity's collective consciousness. They had sharp claws, tentacles sprouting from their bodies, and lifeless, red eyes, reflecting a primal ferocity. Lyra named them the Transformed Ones, a simple yet horrifying name. The confrontation with the Transformed Ones became more complex, as they displayed coordination, sometimes even using basic traps and tactics, showing the corrosive entity's terrifying ability to learn and adapt. Raya had to use all her experience to command the team in tense encounters, employing effective retreat and counterattack tactics, minimizing casualties. Jax discovered that the corrosive entity could disrupt small electronic systems, causing their equipment to occasionally malfunction, leading to deadly dangerous moments during engagements. He had to constantly troubleshoot, sometimes working almost blindly, relying only on experience and intuition. While collecting deeper data within the second Shadow Spire library, Lyra suddenly discovered a heavily encrypted data stream, seemingly from the Shadow Empire, subtly hidden within the ancient Precursor data layers. After much effort, she deciphered a small portion, but what she found made her voice tremble with astonishment and indignation. A rare display from an AI. Raya, Lyra said, her voice more serious than ever. I've uncovered something horrifying. The Veiled Council. They've known about the corrosive entity for a very long time. Even before we discovered it, they deliberately concealed this information. The information Lyra decrypted revealed that the Veiled Council had known about the corrosive entity's existence for thousands of years. From ancient expeditions into uncharted regions of space, they even knew the location and purpose of the Shadow Spires, and had secretly deployed forces to search for them. Their goal was not to destroy the corrosive entity. They had attempted to find and exploit the corrosive entity as a supreme weapon, a tool to achieve their galactic domination. They sought to intentionally awaken it, or at least monitor its awakening, believing they could control an entity far beyond their comprehension and capabilities. This was a monstrous conspiracy, a betrayal not only of humanity but of all life in the galaxy, showing that the Shadow Empire were not just brutal invaders but also those who risked the lives of all races for selfish ambition. Suddenly, an alarm blared, tearing through the quiet atmosphere of the library. The Shadow Empire fleet reappeared outside the second Shadow Spire, rapidly approaching. This time, it wasn't just regular patrol ships, but also a colossal command battleship, black as ink and heavily armed with energy cannons, an unmistakable symbol of a high-ranking commander's presence. This is the Prophet Shadow command ship, Lyra reported, her voice grave. It belongs to Commander Malachor of the Abyssal Legion. He is one of the Shadow Empire's most brutal and intelligent commanders. A brilliant strategist who never abandons his objectives. He's been tracking us. Commander Malachor knew that humanity was inside the Shadow Spire. He didn't just want to destroy them, he wanted to capture Raya's team alive for information. And especially to gain control of the secrets they had found. Believing it was the key to controlling the corrosive entity or at least preventing humanity from doing so. He immediately sent a massive force inside, fighting both the raging transformed ones within the structure and relentlessly hunting Raya's team. Like a cruel pursuit, the battle in the library became fierce. Raya and her team had to fight against both fully equipped Abyssal Legion soldiers, who showed no fear of death, and the abominable transformed ones, creatures that knew no fear, following only a single will to assimilate everything. Jax had to use all his skills to create traps using Precursor technology, disable enemy weapons, and protect the group, while still trying to access more data about the corrosive entity and the eternal core. He even created small bombs from residual Precursor energy to hold off opponents, creating small pulse explosions that disrupted their systems. In the intense pursuit, Lyra continuously guided them through the ancient corridors of the Shadow Spire library, searching for an escape route between two deadly pincers, Commander Malachor's Abyssal Legion and the increasingly widespread corrosive entity's transformed ones. Jax, while trying to bypass a blocked door to open an escape route, accidentally exposed a secret wall cavity. Inside, he found a unique data crystal, emitting a pulsating blue light, hidden behind millions of years of dust. A forgotten treasure of knowledge. Raya, I found this, Jax yelled, his hands still furiously typing on the console, trying to maintain defensive systems. Lyra immediately connected and scanned the data crystal. This is a more detailed map of the Shadow Spire network. Her voice full of astonishment, and personal records of a significant Precursor scientist about the Eternal Core, the central point of the entire system. It also contains information about the Infinity Key, a device capable of sealing or controlling the corrosive entity. However, that information was only a fragment, half of the picture, and it pointed to a single, extremely perilous location, right in the middle of the blind horizon. An area of space even more terrifying than the labyrinth of curses, where no ship dared to venture. Cornered in the ancient library, Raya's team had no choice but to retreat. The growls of the transformed ones and the heavy footsteps of the Abyssal Legion echoed through the corridors, tightening the encirclement. The air was thick with the smell of corroded metal and the disgusting fluid of the corrosive entity spreading uncontrollably within the structure, turning everything into a living nightmare. We have to retreat, now, Raya roared, her energy rifle glowing red as she continuously fired at the approaching enemies, creating a temporary wall of fire. Jax, prepare the Night Hawk. Lyra, can you create an escape route? Lyra, with superhuman processing speed, quickly scanned the Shadow Spire's architectural map. There's an emergency maintenance exit on the lowest level, near the main power supply. But it's very narrow, only enough for one person, and might be blocked by debris or corrosive entity organic matter. Jax, sweating profusely and exhausted, quickly moved to the nearest console, his hands frantically typing on the crystal keyboard, trying to restore the escape door's circuit. I'm trying to unlock it, but it needs time. A lot of time. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying explosion shook the entire Shadow Spire. It wasn't the Abyssal Legion's weapons, it was a more violent outbreak of the corrosive entity, devastating the ancient structure from within. Like a living organism breaking out of its shell, sections of the ceiling and floor collapsed. Rock dust and deformed organic masses rained down, blocking all passages. Raya, we don't have much time, Lyra warned, her voice filled with urgency. A rare urgency. The entire structure is unstable. It will completely collapse within minutes. They rushed to the lower levels, racing against time, their own gasping breaths and hurried footsteps echoing. The roars of the corrosive entity and the screams of assimilated Abyssal Legion soldiers echoed everywhere, forming a symphony of death. Jax tried to open the escape route, but the massive metal door was jammed by the viscous organic masses of the corrosive entity. It's stuck. I can't do anything. The lock mechanism has been corroded. Jax yelled, his hands smeared with blood and dust, his face showing desperation. Get up. We have no other choice. Raya snapped. She knew they were on the verge of despair, with death right behind them. Just then, a group of elite Abyssal Legion soldiers, led by a high-ranking commander in gleaming black armor and glowing weapons, rushed in, cutting off their retreat. It was a dead end. No escape. A fierce engagement erupted. Raya fought like a storm, using every combat skill to protect Jax and Lyra. Jax, though wounded and exhausted, still managed to fire energy beams from his device to hold off the enemy, creating small explosions and interference fields. But their numbers were too great. A colossal Abyssal Legion soldier, armed with heavy energy weapons, lunged towards Jax, pinning him, preparing to deliver the killing blow. Lyra searched for a solution, a final glimmer of hope, continuously scanning all Shadow Spire systems. Raya, the energy exhaust. There's a gap in the system. A main power circuit runs directly above the exit. Lyra suddenly yelled, her voice resolute, as if she had found a way. If we overload the Shadow Spire's power core at that exact point, it will create an explosion strong enough to open the exit. But it will destroy most of the structure and everyone who remains here. Raya looked at Jax, who was being overwhelmed by the enemy. Then at Lyra, who was awaiting her decision. The price was too high, but it was the only option. She remembered Kalen, how he had sacrificed for them. Now it was her turn. No, Jax roared. He understood the meaning of Lyra's words. He didn't want to lose anyone else. I won't leave you behind. You have to. Jax, this is an order. Raya roared, her voice echoing like thunder amidst the chaotic space. Lyra, do it. Initiate overload. I'll hold them off. Don't look back. Before Jax could react, Raya charged forward, unleashing a barrage of fire at the Abyssal Legion soldiers, creating a wall of fire separating her from Jax. She knew she wouldn't survive. This was the only option. She was a soldier, and her duty was to protect the others. She looked at the pulsating blue light from the data crystal Jax held. Humanity's last hope. She remembered Kalen, how he had sacrificed for them. Now it was her turn. Remember what we found, Jax. It's our only hope, Raya yelled, as she plunged into the enemy formation, detonating a final plasma grenade, creating a fierce explosion that engulfed both her and the surrounding enemies. Jax, in extreme agony, watched Raya fight, sparks flying from her gun until the very last moment. He heard the enemy's roars, Raya's final scream. He knew he could do nothing to save her. He clutched the data crystal, feeling it warm in his palm. Initiate overload. Lyra, now, Jax roared, his voice hoarse with pain and despair, tears streaming down his face. Lyra, with a solemn reverberation, almost an AI's sob, replied, understood, Jax, initiating overload of the Shadow Spire's main energy system. Countdown. 3, 2, 1. As Lyra counted to 0, a terrifying and blinding explosion tore apart the entire Shadow Spire. Light from the exploding energy core engulfed everything, creating a fierce shockwave in space. Jax was thrown through the narrow exit, his body aching, every joint feeling like it would separate. But he still clung tightly to the data device that Aris had sacrificed to protect. And now Raya, the Night Hawk, automatically controlled by Lyra with absolute precision, was waiting. Jax fell into the escape pod, his armor heavily damaged, but he was alive, the sole survivor of the original team. Jax, are you okay? Lyra, analyze his body. Lyra's voice was filled with worry, mixed with relief and pain. I survived, Jax gasped, looking back, his eyes empty as he saw the place where his friends had fallen. Behind them, the Shadow Spire was torn apart, leaving only debris floating in space. But more terrifying was the sight within. Shadow Empire ships were being fiercely attacked by the very corrosive entity they had tried to control. Deformed masses of flesh were spreading everywhere, devouring battleships and soldiers alike. Commander Malikor's fleet was retreating in chaos, ships burning and exploding, showing they had tragically underestimated this threat. Lyra, Commander Malikor, he's retreating? Jax asked, his eyes disbelieving at the sight before him. Yes, Jax, Lyra replied. The corrosive entity has erupted far more powerfully than they anticipated. The Shadow Empire made a huge mistake. They awakened something they cannot control. This is our opportunity, but also the beginning of a greater catastrophe if we don't act. Jax felt a bitter taste rise in his mouth. Kaelin and Raya had sacrificed themselves. Aris had fallen, but it seemed that their sacrifice had dealt a heavy blow to the Shadow Empire through the corrosive entity. A victory not of humanity, but of a common threat. Lyra rescanned all of Aris's data and what she had collected from the second Shadow Spire. The information is crucial. We have a more detailed map of the Shadow Spire network, and important fragments about the Infinity Key and the precise location of the central point, the Eternal Core. Deep within the blind horizon, her voice became more resolute, carrying a new determination. A glimmer of hope ignited from the ashes. Kaelin and Raya bought us time. Now, we must use it to end this war. Not just the war against the Shadow Empire, but also the war against the corrosive entity. Before it consumes everything. The Night Hawk plunged into the dark void, carrying the burden of loss. The fallen souls, but also a new, fragile yet burning hope. Jax, the only remaining member of the original team, looked out the window, where distant stars shimmered coldly. Dawn never came, only a deeper darkness, and a new, heavier mission than ever awaited. Their objective for Part 3 would be to find the blind horizon and the Eternal Core, where the Infinity Key was kept to deal with the corrosive entity and ultimately the Shadow Empire. The journey had only just begun.